So we were game ranking, and we asked each other, oh man, what are the best sci-fi games of all time? And normally we say stuff like, oh, well, there's at least 10 of them, right? I think we can all agree on 10. But the ranking got out of hand. There's just too many sci-fi games that are too good. Hi, folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, the 50 best sci-fi games of all time. Starting off with number 50, it's Helldivers 2. Take Starship Troopers, okay? Mix in some capes, add a hodgepodge of sci-fi alien bad guys, and you've got Arrowhead Game Studios' widely successful cooperative shooter. This thing is it's sci-fi, doy. It's got spaceships and aliens and laser guns and a galaxy-spanning end war, but the tone is going for farce. It's not a serious game by any stretch. It's got the booming heroic score, but it comes off more as a joke after your soldier gets battered around by alien bugs repeatedly. In this game, life is cheap and overpowered weaponry is abundant, but it's dangerous because friendly fire cannon will kill you just as easily as the flock of robot Terminator bug people, guys, things. The game is a dark comedy goldmine, and while the sci-fi is light, the satire lays it on thick. I think we started this one off right. Before we continue, though, I'm going to say we do get comments telling us that people aren't seeing our videos. They have to come to our channel. And a thing you can do to save yourself a little time on that, enable notifications. It's something that also helps us a whole lot in the old algorithm. So we appreciate it. We hope it helps you see some stuff you want to see as well. So thanks a lot for enabling notifications. Let's get back to the video. Moving on to number 49, Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. This, entire franchise deserves a big shout out here. But if we're going to choose just one game, it's probably the most recent. It's the game nobody expected From Software to make, especially as a follow-up to the ridiculously successful Elden Ring. They set the tone right from the beginning with a strangely distant and discordant, alienating set of aesthetics and stuff. It's intentionally off-putting in certain ways. Your main character never speaks. You don't have a name, just a call sign. Your operator, your mission giver, they're never seen. In fact, you never see a human an entire time in the game. It's all just mechs. And of course, a whole lot of deliberately unexplained and confusing world building with a whole lot of cyclopean technological hellscapes for you to battle your way through. The sky on this planet is dominated by impossibly huge floating factories or mining facilities or whatever these are supposed to be, and the surface is a blasted wasteland. That is Armored Core 6, an action game with a tone and story that's as cold and distant as the vacuum of space. And number 48 is Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. Not that anything up to this point was really hard sci-fi, but even compared to something like Star Wars, which is firmly in the space fantasy side of science fiction, Warhammer 40k blasts past that low bar into something that only superficially resembles the genre. What Space Marine 2 manages to succeed at, other than having some really entertaining action, is that it manages to capture the mind-boggling scale of the universe. If there's one thing this world likes, it's bodies. Wars are not found by hundreds or thousands or even millions, but literally billions of people across the vastness of space. Everything is unbelievably huge, from the spaceships to the hive cities, which are big enough to house entire planetary populations. This game manages to show that sort of scale in all of its awe-inspiring glory consistently. Simply put, this game has some of the best sci-fi skyboxes in the business. Actual game's pretty fun too. And number 47 is Subnautica. Robinson Crusoe in space, only instead of trying to survive on a deserted island, Subnautica doesn't even give you that. You're stuck in the water, the whole planet's the water, you're the sole survivor of a spaceship crash, and while you eventually can call for help, the only way you can actually leave the planet is to find a cure for a mysterious airborne disease that makes it so everyone who comes here can never leave. That's the primary goal of the game, solving the mystery of why you can't leave the planet, but the gameplay is also pure science fiction survival. Unlike most survival games where you actually have to build everything by hand like a chump, Subnautica gives you access to some powerful tools that let you build a shelter, various vehicles, and tools that help you explore this undersea planet. It's a game that they could have set on Earth, but having it set on another world makes it much more interesting and dangerous. It's a highly polished and sometimes terrifying survival game with a satisfying sense of progression, easily one of the best in the genre, and an all-around great sci-fi experience. At number 46 is Doom Eternal. The Doom franchise isn't usually the first thing that comes to mind when you say sci-fi. And honestly, Doom Eternal has more of the tone of a superhero game than a science fiction one, but you use high-tech guns, Doom guy's got an entire space station to himself. You're teleporting all over the place and bouncing around between Earth and Mars and other dimensions. Yes, the other dimension is usually hell, but ignore that for a second. If you replace the demons with aliens, Doom would be a pretty standard sci-fi thing. In fact, that's literally what they did in the somehow even more insane Doom novels, but that's getting way off topic. The main thing to remember here is that Doom Eternal is an amazing FPS, and while its place in the series is divisive, some people absolutely love it more than any other game in the series, while some don't like its unusual mix of FPS and character action elements. I think it's a highly unique and inventive take on the franchise that dips its toes maybe a little far into the stupid side of the pool, but it's such a crazy over-the-top action experience that I think you can give it a little slack for introducing some unnecessary lore. And number 45 is the Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay. After the prologue, this is a game where it's actually kind of easy to forget that it is a sci-fi game. Riddick's adventures and Ultramax feel like they should have existed in a temporary world other than sci-fi guards and DNA-locked guns and mutant-filled sewers and that kind of stuff. This prison is on another planet, though, and the technology gets more and more advanced every time Riddick finds himself locked in higher and higher levels. The second layer is full of cells stacked up like a giant warehouse, and the final level locks Riddick in literal stasis, where he's only revived for like a minute a day before going back under again. Of course, Vinny finds a way to escape that finds a satisfying mix of stealth, hand-to-hand combat, and first-person shooting. It's a movie tie-in game that really actually does it right, because it's a good video game first and an extension of a franchise second. At number 44 is Returnal. The time loop can be a lot of things. Sometimes it's supernatural, sometimes it's science-based in some way, and sometimes it's something in between like Returnal. This roguelike third-person shooter has all the hallmarks of a sci-fi epic, with its astronaut aesthetic, weird alien world to uncover, but there's also an element of psychological horror to the game that makes it unclear exactly what's supposed to be going on. Ultimately, though, the thing that really matters is the gameplay, and Returnal has excellent gameplay. It's got super responsive controls, really satisfying weapons, and many weird alien creatures you encounter on your journey. It's a really unforgiving game. Runs can last upwards of an hour, and a single goddamn slip-up can lead to restart, but it's also really well made. It's got an intriguing premise, fantastic action, and some really impressive visuals coming from what is otherwise a pretty small studio. And number 43 is Wolfenstein: The New Order. This quasi-reboot of the long-running Wolfenstein franchise took a bold step into alternate history. The game asks the simple question, what if the Nazis won World War II? More importantly, what if an impossibly yoked muscle man killed them all? Somehow, this game manages to become coherent as it treads between somber and serious examination of the world gone wrong with the over-the-top action, the cartoonish villains, and the absurd scenarios. There's outright silliness in this game. This is a game where you're killing Nazis on the moon, and it still manages to tell a troubling story about what happens when evil wins. That's what makes the game really great. The action's intense and viscerally satisfying, while the story's actually engaging, sometimes heartbreaking, and other times laugh-out-loud funny. At number 42 is Alien Isolation. The entire video game industry owes a massive debt to Ridley Scott's 1979 horror classic Alien. Basically, every single aspect of that film and James Cameron's sequel have been strip-mined by developers the world over to create their sci-fi worlds. So it's only fair to honor the game in that universe that, well, yes, there are actually quite a few great Alien games. Isolation manages to honor the original while building on top of it in some interesting ways. This survival horror game perfectly recreates the crunchy space analog aesthetic of the original movie. They were painstakingly accurate in their attempts to recreate the world as presented in that movie. And while it might appear anachronistic today, obviously if there's space travel where you're not using dot matrix computer screens, but the grungy, grimy, lo-fi world of those movies is perfect for space horror. And this game is scary. It's one of the scariest of all time, and it's impressive given how played out the Alien actually is. They managed to do the seemingly impossible, which made Alien, like the Alien, not just a threat, but actually scary in a way that hasn't been done before or since. It's just a great horror game, but man, it's a great horror game, but you need to be in the right headspace to play it. It can be exhausting. And number 41 is Stellaris. This Paradox-published grand strategy game may have felt pretty bare bones when it came out, but after years of support and a lot of DLCs and expansions, Stellaris is an all-time great space management game. It's highly variable and complex, there's an excellent storytelling engine. If anything, it's actually the best thing about Stellaris. The way its events allow you to build your civilization and create a story from what's otherwise a random assortment of gameplay tools. Sure, it's got the usual problem of any 4X game where it starts to drag late in the game, but there's just so much stuff to experiment with here and otherwise experience that Stellaris is a game you can get lost for hundreds of hours without ever actually finishing it. And number 40 is Titanfall 2. Sure, the original game's multiplayer might have been better, but as a total package, 2 is one of the all-time best. It's a game that took on Call of Duty, and even though Call of Duty inexplicably also went sci-fi that same year, and while it didn't win in terms of sales, in our hearts it's always going to be the better game. What makes Titanfall 2 great is the campaign. It's a non-stop FPS action joyride that just doesn't let up. It's excellently paced, it runs you through multiple creative set pieces and science fiction concepts like a massive factory that builds training grounds to an entire level where you have time travel, you can switch between the present and the past. There's not a lot of it, even for a Call of Duty style campaign. It's kind of short, but it's all killer, no filler. And number 39 is Oxygen Not Included. While it might not look like a very serious game, Oxygen Not Included is one of the most science-based games out there. The premise is that you're building a space colony in an alien rock, which is pretty standard for a management game, but what makes Oxygen Not Included different is that you have to worry about a lot more than just building rooms and keeping your colonists fed and happy. In this game, everything's scarce and everything has a price, and you will pay down the line. To run generators, you need to tap into natural gas. Can't get those gases without a danger of venting it into your colony, because, I mean, why wouldn't you need a means to make everyone sick or eventually kill them? No, you have to figure out ways around that. Generators can power your equipment, but they can also create a lot of heat, and you have to have some sort of way of cooling that, stops your colony from literally cooking from inside it. The entire game is a balancing act between all these various chemical and physical forces that are constantly putting pressure on you. It's an extremely challenging and complex game, but as far as real sci-fi games go, this is one that might actually teach you a thing or two. And number 38 is Faster Than Light. This game is one of the early indie roguelike breakthrough games, but for good reason, because it manages to be consistently tense and very challenging. The presentation is pretty bare bones, but it's perfect for what the game is trying to be, which is a spaceship management game where you have your crew assigned to various jobs on your ship. The goal is keeping everyone alive and you're keeping your ship in working order so you can eventually confront the rebel flagship and end the run. The game has a lot of space battles, but plays out pretty differently. Instead of directly piloting your ship, you're moving people around to various locations, different stations, putting out fires, fighting off boarding parties. The game manages to have a lot of little details while being very clear and easy to understand, which is a real accomplishment. It's a fun, strategic, and challenging little game. And number 37 is Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. This single-player third-person action game seemed like it was going to be an obnoxious mess before release, and the final product actually exceeded all expectations. Sure, the core gameplay is pretty basic, but the story is surprisingly engaging, heartfelt, and even devastating at times, and the sci-fi world they created, which is obviously heavily inspired by the Marvel movies, is very cool because they go even further with it to create some of the most visually impressive alien environments ever made for a game. It takes a while to properly ramp up. It's a game that starts pretty slow, but the build-up is definitely worth it. The dialogue is amusing, the action, when it finally kicks into high gear, is very entertaining. Game looks fantastic, even today. This might be probably the best interpretation of these characters yet. It was assumed the game would be a poor recreation of the movies, but it might actually be the better adaptation. And number 36 is Red Faction Guerrilla, one of my favorite frickin' games ever. Viva la Revolucion on Mars. But the real star of the show is the impressive destruction physics, which are still impressive today. Probably the closest analog right now is the finals, and man, would I love to play the entirety of Red Faction Guerrilla with the finals controls and destruction, but that's not in the cards as of right now. Who knows, though? If whoever owns the franchise currently, I think it's either Embracer or somebody, maybe get a hold of Embark. Anyway, it's very much Saints Row in space, although oddly more realistic somehow. And that satisfying destruction is not just for show. The many objectives revolve around completely destroying certain structures, and leveling enemy bases makes the Red faction, or you, more powerful in a region. In many ways, it's a point of interest clearing game. The entire gameplay loop is you need to lower the meter, unlock the main story missions, and you do that by blowing stuff up, completing side objectives, which involve blowing stuff up, and playing minigames where you blow stuff up. It would be repetitive if it wasn't the best thing ever. This game is open world, but it's really fast-paced and creative with its objectives so that it just doesn't drag on. It's one of my favorite freaking games, man. It's easily the best game in the Red Faction series, and one of the most purely entertaining games on this list. And number 35 is Satisfactory. Nothing more sci-fi than landing on a deserted planet and turning it into a sprawling factory world for your own pleasure, right? It's survival gameplay taken to its absolute limit. In most survival games, the technology innovation ends at brick walls. But here you can build entire rail networks and giant automated factories, harvesting, transforming an endless stream of resources that are mined automatically. You're building roads and cars that you can drive or that will drive on their own. They're essentially giving you the ability to be the foreman of a planet-spanning factory by the end of the game, and it all starts off with nothing. It's a game that is kind of disturbing if you think about it too much. There's no time to do any deep reading when you've got this clockwork factory running entirely on its own. It's just an extremely satisfying experience. It's like Factorio, except satisfying. Satisfactory, even. Sorry. You get to directly walk through your factory, though. That's a lot more satisfying. Am I wrong? You can appreciate everything you built that way. It's a game where you can see the progress you've made everywhere, and there's so much satisfaction looking at your factory. And number 34 is Dead Space, either the 2008 original or the 2023 remake. They're both excellent. The original set the groundwork, of course. That's the game that took the space industrial alien aesthetic and pushed it as far as it could go. Dead Space was disregarded as Resident Evil in space by enough people, I guess. Well, it's not entirely incorrect. The game does incorporate a lot of creative innovations that have come out of its science fiction set dressing. The stasis power, for instance, allows you to slow down enemies, the kinesis module that is used to manipulate objects, pick up and throw stuff, and of course, the iconic plasma cutter that can fire vertically or horizontally to slice off necromorph appendages, or just, shoot them right down the middle of the head. None of this stuff would really make sense if it weren't a sci-fi game, so yeah, the setting is what really sells the game. To the Ishimura is a place where you really sort of get to know everything over the course of the game. The story eventually brings you to a pretty much extensive understanding of every nook and cranny of the ship. I mentioned Alien is owed a lot. The Ishimura is very much like an Alien-ish conceit. But what makes Dead Space so great is it's just a really smartly designed and well-paced game. It's got the right amount of thrills and scares. You get a constant dopamine hit of upgrades for your character. In a lot of ways, it's a better follow-up to Resident Evil 4 than Resident Evil 5. That's high praise. And number 33 is Abiotic Factor. This game has a simple but brilliant premise. It's Half-Life, but a survival game. Instead of trapping you on some boring desert island, it sticks you in a sprawling underground research facility that's a mix of SCP and Black Mesa. That alone makes the game feel very different from its survival game contemporaries. It's got a very carefully designed environment instead of a randomly generated field. Crafting feels a lot more capital S science than you usually get in those games. Like, you're not building dinky bows and arrows, you're building high-tech equipment that isn't exactly built for killing, but it does work for killing. You're constantly problem solving in Abiotic Factor, running into some crazy danger and devising solutions. There's even alternate dimensions to travel through. Abiotic Factor is honestly very good. It's a very creative and engaging survival game, one of the most out there. And number 32 is XCOM Enemy Unknown. This 2012 reboot of the classic tactical strategy series is a landmark achievement in a lot of ways. For one thing, it proved that highly polished PC-centric tactical games could actually be viable as a means of generating profit. For another, it showed there was still room for innovation in the genre. It may have been a simplified version of a lot of the mechanics of the original game, but in a lot of ways, it was an improvement. It was more straightforward, maybe a little more limited in terms of tactical options, but the lack of options actually made it so the choices were more interesting. This game basically invented turn-based cover shooting, and it did it really well. The premise is iconic. You're an organization tasked with stopping a secret alien invasion of Earth, and in each mission, you have to assemble a team, kit them out, send them off to die, battling overwhelming and mysterious alien forces. Between missions, you expand your base, research new technology, recruit more soldiers. Man, is it a good tactical game. Some believe the sequel surpasses it. I'm sympathetic to that view. I'm not really sure personally, but the original's the innovator, and it's kind of a miracle in its own right. When the game came out, we were in the Xbox 360 era. Games like this did not get released, especially not from major publishers like 2K, but it happened, and it was better than anyone expected. And number 31 is Nier Automata. This is a game that is nuts. That it exists is nuts. Everything about it is nuts. And it turned out to be a massive success, and that's nuts. It's hard to believe when I say it out loud. It's a weird as hell sci-fi action RPG that's a follow-up to the cult classic Nier, and it's a bona fide hit that has sold 9 million units, more than 9 million units. The game tackles a ton of really complex sci-fi topics like artificial intelligence, the purpose of existence, what will happen after humanity is gone. There's an alien invasion in the backstory somewhere, all while you play as this gothic babe in a short skirt slicing up enemies that look like wind-up toys and climbing ladders, conveniently types of gamers. It all comes from the mad mind of Yoko Taro, and I mean, this would have been a laughable disaster from somebody else, or even from him. I think it's entirely possible that it could be a laughable disaster from him, but don't forget Platinum was involved with this as well. It's such a weird and fascinating game. It asks a lot of people playing it, but that trust feels really good. The game doesn't think you're stupid, and you're rewarded for proving it right. And number 30 is Gears of War 2. Are these sci-fi games? I don't know. What even is the planet Sarah? A space colony? I guess it's just a different planet with history and culture. And a chainsaw and a machine gun together as one at last. It's a Space Marines battle alien monsters game, but instead of coming from space, the aliens attack from underground. What separates these games from the pack? I mean, there's other third-person shooter campaigns out there, but they just have this meaty, deliberate movement. Much more powerful, over-the-top weaponry, and the second Gears of War improved that arsenal and threw in a lot more set pieces. And the story barely matters. We're here for the violence, and it's crazy enjoyable. Mulching a wide variety of monsters doesn't get much better than Gears, and while its sci-fi arsenal is like a slightly more grounded version of Warhammer 40k, it does a good job of showing us what makes the world of Gears not just Earth by another name. There's deadly, razor-sharp, freezing rain, giant worms that sink cities, and underground airships. Game's got it all. Completely nuts. Still too serious for its own good, but yet great and so much fun. And number 29 is Cyberpunk 2077. Yeah, the game might have been a technical mess when it really originally came out, especially on consoles. But the secret to Cyberpunk's eventual success is that there was always the bones of a good game here. The main story was always strong, it's just that other stuff surrounding it needed work. And while it took a while to get there, the 2.0 patch finally made the game what we always wanted it to be. There's a fine line between Cyberpunk and Sci-Fi. You might think there's a distinct Cyberpunk and a distinct Sci-Fi genre, but that game at least does deal with a lot of intriguing speculative concepts, out-of-control AIs, mind control, recording, reliving a person's memories, a whole lot of other stuff. I'm going to call it a subgenre. Cyberpunk's subgenre of sci-fi, right? Okay, good. The game's expansion DLC gets into even more of this stuff. It's a smorgasbord of genre fiction all packed into one game. And number 28 is Fallout New Vegas. You could put almost any Fallout game on this list, it'd be fine. But years go by and New Vegas is really the axis from which the entire series revolves. It's the game that took the over-the-top world of Fallout, turns it into a place that's not just a collection of post-apocalyptic ideas mixed up with futuristic technology and a 50s Americana aesthetic, but a coherent world that changes and evolves. The sci-fi has always been there in the series, from the vaults to the high-powered armor that you wear, the man-made mutants, hell-bent on world domination, the secret cabal of madmen with plasma weapons, literal terraforming device called the Guardian, fuck me. Don't know why I can't say that. It's called the GEC. Anyway, the Fallout series has always been more than a nuclear wasteland. Has elements of sci-fi go along with the Mad Max brutality, rockets, space lasers, armies of robots. a man who's been alive for 200 years. It's all secondary to the main conflict between a burgeoning new republic and a bunch of violent tribals cosplaying as a Roman legion. The world of New Vegas is a changing, living place, and the old world is getting further away than ever. It's an open world game with ideas, and it's also just a really entertaining game that gives the player a lot of agency. And number 27, it's Bioshock. A game doesn't have to be set in the future to be speculative. Even a game like Bioshock, with ideas firmly rooted in the past, can tell us something about our present and future. Of course, the main appeal of the game is the setting, the crumbling underwater city of Rapture, a place that was supposed to be an objectivist paradise, as a spiritual successor to the System Shock series. Say that 3 times fast. This game tells a compelling story of a city's collapse, almost entirely through audio logs found while exploring the dilapidated depths of its ruin. The way the game manages to tell a coherent story that explains the events from the city's birth, eventual decay, and total collapse, it's all fascinating. And we experience it through characters rather than just through dry exposition. It helps the core gameplay, which is also just entertaining on its own. Sure, the science of the game is not possible, but that's true of a lot of science fiction. All that really matters is that the story's interesting and the world has logic. And Bioshock pulls it off. The morality system's a little trite these days, but who cares? Everything else about the game's fantastic. And number 26 is Star Wars Battlefront 2 Classic, a pure multiplayer entertainment game. They do not make them like this anymore. Just so you know exactly what it's about, I don't mean EA Battlefront 2, the loot box controversy generating one, absolutely not. I'm talking about the original Battlefront 2, the one developed by Pandemic, published by LucasArts in 2005. Game looks archaic as hell, but as a multiplayer game, there's so much going on here that it is nuts. Modern multiplayer games are so optimized, they strip everything down to the barest essentials, but this game cranked it out. Modes, characters, vehicles, maps, everything. It's all here, it's all in excess, and the game is way better for it. It was generally a big free-for-all that was never completely balanced, but that doesn't matter. What was important was that it was fun. And number 25 is Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal, a remarkably consistent series as long as you stick to the main titles and ignore Deadlocked, even though it's not that terrible, but it's still a dip in quality. If I had to pick the best game, it's the third game, the one that introduced the robot supremacist Dr. Nefarious. I mean, otherwise the games are kind of all the same. You jump in a spaceship, fly to various planets, blast everything that moves, over-the-top selection of constantly evolving weaponry, and repeat. Third game really nailed that formula though. They cranked the action dial up, added a few new mini-games, and faced you off against even more enemies in bigger, more impressive levels. This is just about the platonic ideal of a Ratchet and Clank game, and they're all pretty much all solid in their own ways. If I had to pick one, it's this one. And number 24 is Command & Conquer Tiberian Sun. This RTS series went full sci-fi with a jump to the future where the modern world of the first CNC game has been overtaken by an alien crystal growth called Tiberium, transforms the planet into a wasteland, forced humanity's rapid technological transformation to adapt. Huge step up for the series, actually. Not just because the setting is so radically different, but the production values as well. They brought in an all-star cast with Michael Biehn from Terminator, legendary James Earl Jones, don't need to tell you about him. Cutscenes, still kind of cheesy. They take the story seriously, though. It's a darker game in general than the previous entries, with a downbeat atmosphere. Closest thing to sci-fi this series ever actually got is walking tanks, very alien world. Later games walk back some of the biggest changes and make future games more like the originals, but it's hard not to at least respect what they were doing here. And number 23 is 1000X Resist, a weird one, almost entirely narrative, little to no gameplay, very slight amount of puzzle solving, but it's a brilliant game that manages to tell a very strange but effective story that touches on a lot of complicated issues. The presentation, of course, little off-putting, you can see. The visuals aren't going to blow anyone away, but it's such an interesting story that it works. It's just so well done. A lot of people were calling this best game of 2024, highly praised by the few people who actually played. It is not a game for everyone. It does take a little while for the story to really kick in, but if you're interested in adventure games that aren't afraid to explore challenging themes, 1000X Resist. And number 22 is Star Ocean: The Second Story. For a genre as prolific as the JRPG, it's surprising how few sci-fi games there are. I mean, every so often you get something like Lagrange Point on Famicom, but most RPGs from Japan were fantasy with a few sci-fi elements, and the Star Ocean series, on the face of it, was supposed to turn that balance on its head. What we got was a lot of games that were non-Starfleet characters, so they kind of just so happened to get abandoned on alien planets. Through pure coincidence, looked exactly like generic Dragon Quest West-inspired fantasy lands. Yeah, this kept happening in these games. Later ones, they lean a little more into actual science fiction, but they're also worse. This game is probably the best balance of being actually good and having a proper sci-fi theme, at least in the second half. What really makes these games interesting is the strange systems where you can increase relationship values with characters that can change the outcome of the ending. A lot of non-linearity in this game. Story can change pretty significantly depending on which characters you recruit and how you progress through the game. Relatively short, but very deep and strange RPG. And number 21 is Portal 2. Well, the first game managed to be a surprise hit. Portal 2 managed to surpass it. This puzzle game is incredibly entertaining. It's always challenging, but never overly frustrating. Basically, it's a puzzle game paced like Half-Life 2, and by that, I mean it's an expertly designed game that manages to be inventive and clever and build on the concepts of the first game in a lot of exciting ways. You still have the portal gun, but nothing about that is changed, but still, all the puzzles involve making portals, navigating increasingly complicated test chambers, but there's new tools that mix things up, like a liquid that can speed you up or cause you to bounce through the air. There's new characters, more complex locations, and a generally more diverse selection of puzzles. That and the humor, which is still some of the best stuff they've ever put into a game. And number 20 is SOMA, one of the best horror games that also deals with some of the headiest sci-fi concepts imaginable. Where there are physical dangers to deal with in the game, the real horror is psychological. That's saying something because you're trapped in a deep-sea research base after a meteorite hit the Earth and killed everything on the planet, all while being taken over by a haywire AI system. It's similar to developers' previous game Amnesia: The Dark Descent, where you're sneaking around murderous creatures, but there's more of a puzzle-solving element here that mixes things up quite a bit. It's also really well-paced. You never get bogged down in one thing for too long. Continuously, it reinvents itself, and the story gets darker and stranger. It's a solid horror game with an exceptional sci-fi premise. And number 19 is Prey, the 2017 one. That's got nothing to do with the original Prey from 2006 or that game's canceled sequel. I don't know why they decided to call it Prey. Kind of muddies the waters, gets in the way of one of the best immersive sims of all time. This has got a crazy interconnected world. It is meticulous. Every part of the space station you're on serves a purpose, and every person on the station can be looked up on a security computer. They're all actual people who are somewhere. Some are alive, most are bodies, but they're all accounted for, and they've got workstations and sleeping quarters and all. The way the station connects it with itself, it's brilliant. It's similar to Bioshock. You can follow the stories of most of the crew from their jobs, their eventual demise or rescue. It's a carefully constructed clockwork engine that's essentially one gigantic level all stitched together. It's one of Arcane's crowning achievements in level design, and while it may not necessarily be their best game, this is a debatable fact. I'm sure somebody will say it is his best game. It's definitely the most ambitious game, though, by a country mile. And number 18 is Marathon 2. Before Halo, there was Marathon. These games are rudimentary looking today, but they were very ahead of their time in terms of storytelling and complexity. Out of the 3 games in the trilogy, the second's probably the best. First game tells an interesting story, but the level design is very rough. Third game is endlessly fascinating. It's a game that explores alternate realities, psychological horror, the role of myth, the inevitable heat death of the universe. It's incomprehensible, and you will be forced to play large segments of the game a second time because you took the wrong exit on a random level. Marathon 2 tells an interesting story while having a mostly straightforward and fun FPS gameplay thing going. The real star of the show is the artificial intelligence Durandal, who is a fascinating character who plays both antagonist and ally depending on the circumstances. Writing is excellent, and while the level design was never quite as good as Doom, it's an all-time great early FPS. And number 17 is Xenogears, the legendary cult classic that had a famously rushed ending. Am I talking about Evangelion or Xenogears? Who knows? Both properties were products of the late 90s and were intentional subversions of the genre. Xenogears took many of the common tropes of the JRPG, turned them on their head, made them darker, more thematically rich. Might seem like this is just your standard RPG, but everybody has mechs. It's not it. There's a lot more going on. Touches on just about every sci-fi concept imaginable. If anything, it's a little overstuffed, and that's probably why the second disc ended up being a slideshow where they just explain what happens in the plot instead of letting you play it. But even with that giant glaring black mark against the game, it's still an all-time classic. Very, very flawed one, but man, is it interesting in hindsight. And number 16 is Starcraft, one of the greatest RTSs. Still somehow managed to bungle the perfect balance between 3 completely different factions. It's not actually even balanced. Each side is so unique and interesting. The game is blatantly unbalanced, but part of that is what is the appeal in the multiplayer circles that enjoyed it so much. It's just got a great unit roster for everybody. Its story campaigns are great, engaging and well done. The cutscenes look a little rough, but in the late 90s they were pretty cutting edge. Voice acting is still top notch. The game is the platonic ideal of RTS. Number 15 is No Man's Sky, a space exploration survival game. It was pretty bare bones when it launched back in 2016, but Hello Games has been consistently putting out major updates and expansions for like 10 years now, and it's all been gratis, free, incredible achievement in long-term game support, and it transformed No Man's Sky into a game with an almost overwhelming amount of content to explore. At its core, it's still basically a survival game too. You're exploring procedurally generated planets, gathering resources, building bases, but it's just way more fleshed out and complex than, I can describe. There's factions, space battles, expeditions, just tons of different things that you can experience, and there's multiplayer, so you can play it with friends. Huge sandbox of a game. If you like space exploration that's accessible but still overwhelming based on how much you have to do, No Man's Sky is where to go. And number 14 is Rimworld. What could have been a standard and kind of conventional colony building game is, it's not just a management game, it's a storytelling game. Rimworld is Dwarf Fortress in space, a game where crises build on top of each other until everything comes crashing down, and one colonist starts eating the others, and another runs around naked and smears feces on the wall. It's crazy. It's one of those games that's less about winning and more about just seeing what'll happen. Usually the space colony falls to ruin, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they can survive, but are inevitably changed by many catastrophes that will constantly keep you on your toes. There is room to play smart and build a long-lasting colony that withstands the many external dangers, but it's much more fun seeing things crumble. And number 13 is Nine Souls, a Dao-punk indie Metroidvania, according to the developers. Sci-fi concepts, distinctly Chinese mythology and philosophy, and cute cat people. Still has a very dark and tragic story, though, but the real meat and potatoes is combat and exploration. It's a Metroidvania. It does have demanding combat. You do need a good parry game to make progress here, but it's so well made, it's kind of hard to complain how linear the game actually is. The story is what makes it sci-fi, and it's one of the game's best elements. It's rare for a game in this genre to have this good of a story. Well told, it's presented very well. Just everything about it's great. And number 12 is System Shock 2. This 1999 immersive sim horror classic is still a major influence on game design today. The ship the game takes place on, the Von Braun, is iconic. The enemies you face, the parasitic alien life forms known as the Many, they're some of the most unsettling video game monsters ever. What makes the game so interesting is how it was one of the first games to mix RPG character building with a first-person horror FPS. There are games that did something similar before, but just not on the level of this one. The first System Shock is a classic, but it's more of a sci-fi dungeon crawler. This is an immersive sim, and while the distinction might sound razor thin, it is notable if you've played them both. You can be sneaky, you can try to fight head on, you can focus on using psychic powers instead of ballistic weapons, but whatever you choose, you're limited to what you have access to, and the game doesn't go easy on you. It's a foundational sci-fi game, one of the most important, and one that holds up surprisingly well even now, especially since, quality of life improvements have been added by remastering forces. And number 11 is 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim. Vanillaware is a Japanese developer that's well known for a distinct art style, but they didn't have a breakthrough until this game. Part visual novel, part tower defense. This game lets you bounce around between 13 characters, and in some cases you actually have to in order to progress certain character stories. Sounds like it would be impossible to follow, but actually each character's story is like a different genre. One person straight up experiences a time loop. There's a wide variety of stories you encounter. Somehow they all tie together at the end. There's bonkers twists. The game's actually really good at throwing at you. They completely recontextualize the entire nature of the game and story, which is what you're playing the game for. It's as sci-fi as story as there can be. And number 10 is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. Both Coder games are worth checking out. First is a more complete product, but the second is definitely a more interesting game. It's darker, it's more morally murky, it's also a lot more incomplete. Fan mods managed to restore a lot of the cut content, but it doesn't automatically fix the flaws of the games, and the ending is a little sudden and a little unsatisfying. Far from a perfect game, but man does it challenge the black and white morality of the Star Wars universe with a story that does not give you easy answers or simple ways out. Some people feel like the game is attacking the central concepts of Star Wars. Some people think that of The Last Jedi. But I think, hey, maybe sometimes it's good to ask. Doesn't mean that they're calling the game bad. Some people think that the developers actually hate the series, but I think they have great respect for Star Wars. The people who are willing to pull back the curtain are often the people who are the most interested in the thing. And number 9 is Super Metroid. Not the first Metroid, but it's a game that puts the Metroid in Metroidvania. It's an essential game for, the whole genre. It manages to feel modern now. as long as you rebind the standard controls. What's striking about this game is how moody and atmospheric it is for being on the Super Nintendo. The amount of story they're able to tell with almost no text is absolutely incredible, and it's one of the main reasons the game is held in high esteem even now. The other is, of course, the exploration and action. I mean, there's a lot of reasons this game is held in high esteem even now. It's just an all-around brilliantly designed game. One of the best games of all time. And number 8 is Homeworld. This space RTS came out back in 1999, but is one of the most unique and interesting games in the genre for more than a few reasons, but especially because it's got three-dimensional movement. It's not one of the rare space games where you're locked on a single axis. You actually move up and down all around. It's really tactically rich and complex due to it. Unlike other RTS games, you're not building a base here. Instead, you have a mothership with persists throughout the whole game. Your fleet sticks around between missions, so there's permanence. Every ship counts. Great presentation, tells an interesting story, and told in a uniquely distant way. And number 7 is Halo Combat Evolved. I mean, you needed a killer app for Xbox to do what it did. A lot of FPS games on PS2 and Nintendo 64 and GameCube, but none of them felt as good as Halo. Game was a trendsetter. Nobody could copy it. There would be so many attempts, but they couldn't. The weapons, the vehicles, a straightforward but entertaining story, constant forward momentum, the non-stop action, everything just worked. The first game was revolutionary, but it was not without its flaws. Case in point, the library, a universally reviled level that's boring, goes on way too long. Too much the second half is repeating levels in reverse. Game got some things wrong, but so much else right that it didn't really matter. The Covenant are well-rounded and interesting enemies, perfectly balanced with the dumb and easy grunts mixed in with the deadly elites. Halo's just a really fun game. And number 6 is Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. The popularization of the term memes came from this game. Information is what this game is about, and man does it have a lot to say. The first Metal Gear Solid dipped its toes in sci-fi concepts, but this game just dives first into them. Is basically a mind fuck of Raiden, who is not Solid Snake. That's kind of the mind fuck for you, the player, and this game is just one bizarre discovery after another until you get this cumulative total of what seems like nonsense, but also actually makes sense if you spend 2 decades figuring it out. So many of the issues we're dealing with today, they accurately criticized in this game. And number 5 is Half-Life 2. It'd be impossible to top 1998's Half-Life, right? Nobody could do that. Oh, but Valve found a way. In some ways, this game is yet to be topped. It did things that nobody else was doing and still aren't doing. It is showing its age, obviously, but it does hold up quite well. Gravity Gun, still, bar none, one of the best tools ever in a FPS. It's so satisfying to use. They made massive leaps in not just physics technology, but facial animation. It's just an all-around extremely good game, well-paced, tons of variety, super fun, holds up. And number 4 is Chrono Trigger, the 1995 Super Nintendo RPG, put together by a killer's row of creators at Square Enix, known as the Dream Team, and it shows. It's one of the most confident, well-crafted, and excellent all-around RPGs of the era. Hell, of all eras. It's a fantasy game, but only for a while, then it becomes a sci-fi game. There's not a lot of sci-fi that starts in the past and deals with characters from the past traveling through time, including to a dystopian future and even to the end of time itself. Chrono Trigger's pretty basic and simple, but has amazing sprite work, a great soundtrack, a solid battle system, and was one of the first major games to have multiple distinct endings that aren't fail states. And that added a lot of replay value because it was kind of short for an RPG, but actually, in my opinion, that works in the game's favor. It's all killer, no filler, never, ever do I feel bored playing Chrono Trigger. And number 3 is Master of Orion 2. It's the 4X space game, still one of the high watermarks for the genre, somehow managed to be better than almost every other game it's attempted to follow it. A lot of options and depth, management simulation, it's just done best here. It's still flawed, of course. As usual with 4X games, it starts to drag in the late game. I could say that about any 4X game. But the depth of the actually tactical choices make this just a popular mainstay in a space strategy game circle, even now. Just bring it up. You'll hear its praises. And number 2, Deus Ex. Truly exceptional game. Lots of it doesn't hold up. Voice acting's absurd. Graphics were dated when the game came out. But it is the immersive sim. It is a once-in-a-lifetime accomplishment. It gives you so many different ways to approach everything, and it's all complex and it accommodates multiple playstyles. Got a mishmash story, pretty much every popular conspiracy theory concept from the 90s, which you'd think would make it feel dated, but it actually is clever, surprisingly relevant today. It tackles politics in a very direct way. At a lot of points, the game stops dead for J.C. Denton to get into an argument with a random NPC about the state of democracy and the way technology is affecting our lives. Simply a better written game than any other game in the series too, with more depth to the gameplay as well. It's far from a perfect game, but those flaws are what makes it interesting, except some of the voices in the China section. That day doesn't work as well. And finally, at number 1, with my voice barely holding together still, it's Mass Effect Legendary Edition. This is a cheat because I'm bundling all 3 games in the Mass Effect trilogy together, but you can't really talk about one game without the others. The series was a grand experiment about making your choices actually matter, and whether the actual results get there, it's debatable, but the only way to play these games is the 3 games in sequence. Other games give you choices, but the sequels mostly ignore them. Witcher mostly does it by doing its own thing with the sequel. Dragon Age tried to carry your decision between games, then gave up on it. This is the only one that did it. For that alone, the series deserves praise alongside its very well realized and intriguing world. The in-game encyclopedia made it easy for anyone to dig into it. First Mass Effect may have been rough around the edges, but as a sci-fi game, it's maybe the best in the series. 2 is probably the best all-around game, culminating in the really satisfying suicide mission finale, and 3 is a valiant attempt to wrap things up that falls apart a bit at the end, but the journey's worth it. The resolution of the Krogan storyline, for instance, very well done, not on its own as a very well done part of the 3rd game. These are all flawed in their own ways, and the focus on cover-based shooting can be not to everyone's taste, but goddamn, Mass Effect, as long as you ignore Andromeda, what a series. That's all I've got for you today. That's 50 frickin' games. We love all of them. Their game ranks as best of all time. I even loved talking about 50 of them in a row, even though my voice clearly doesn't. It is not holding up. Such are the sacrifices one makes. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. Become a member. Join the 1% Club. And you get access to the Falcon Show, which is exclusive every Saturday. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.